Reconciliation has become a touchstone in this country. Leaders, elders, politicians, artists, and activists point to it as critical for the future relationship between Canada and Indigenous people. And yet, for many Canadians, including new Canadians, what they should do or know or understand often remains unclear. Here to help move forward the education part of the conversation, we welcome Susan Dion, Associate Professor in the Faculty of Education at York University; Pamela Palmater, Associate Professor in the Department of Politics and Public Administration and Chair in the Indigenous Governance field at Ryerson University; Tanya Senk, Principal at Wandering Spirit School and centrally assigned Principal at the Urban Indigenous Education Centre, both part of the Toronto District School Board; John Moskowitz, Rabbi Emeritus, Holy Blossom Temple, and author of Evolution of an Unorthodox Rabbi; and Jerry Nachadija Lutaya from People for Education's Next Generation Committee. And we are delighted to welcome all of you to TVO tonight for what we hope will be an important and timely conversation on one of the biggest issues in our country today. I want to start, Tanya, with you. Last year, we may remember that the Ontario Ministry of Education stopped rewriting the curriculum as it related to areas dealing with Indigenous content. So let's go back to last summer and have you bring us, just sort of remind us, what happened at that moment?
So what had happened, and I'd like to go a little back further, is that there was a commitment from the government and the Ministry of Education to go forward with the first phase of the revisions to the curriculum.
That was the previous government.
That's right, as per the TRC
Truth and
calls to
Reconciliation
action.
Commission.
Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada calls to action, number 62 and 63, that specifically stated that curriculum needed to be developed in order to address the knowledge gap.
So that was happening. That
was happening, and also on Indigenous collaborative inquiry that was happening across the province. So school boards, particularly specifically with the TDSB, we went ahead and we did the revisions to the curriculum for that first phase. However, in the second phase, it was stopped.
This is after the government changed hands.
That was after the government changed hands, and people were poised and ready to write. Indigenous educators, scholars, elders were all ready to go, and it was canceled on the Friday when they were ready and poised to meet here in Toronto on the Monday.
Canceled or moratorium pending further study?
Well, that's a little bit of an area where there's some ambiguity. It's stopped right now, and there hasn't really been any further discussions about how we're going to move forward with that. But despite the fact that the second phase isn't happening, there are educators and scholars that are very committed and keen to continuing to do that despite any moratorium or any pause or however it may be called.
Okay, Jerry, come on in here and you tell us what you think the implications of this moratorium, cancellation, call it what you will, are.
Well, I think it's tremendously unfortunate, and I think there's certainly a lot of discussion around the idea and concept of reconciliation, but equally important is having a discussion and conversation about the truth. And so by the government's decision to not allow this to continue, hundreds and thousands of students across Canada, and specifically within the TDSB, are not having the opportunity to learn about the truth of this country. And so I think many people are very interested in advancing towards reconciliation, but in my personal opinion, that's not possible without the truth. And so for myself, I know I went through the education system and did not learn enough about the history of this country and how it relates to Indigenous people.
You went through the Toronto system?
I grew up in Ottawa, but okay. I grew up in Ontario and went through the Ontario education system. But I did not learn enough about it. And I've taken it upon myself to further my own education and my own learning. But I think that that is a fundamental thing that should be implemented in the Ontario education system as well.
Let's, Pamela, just get a better understanding of what elementary level students ought to know. In your view, and you don't have to do a deep dive into curriculum here, but generally speaking, what do they need to know?
They need to know everything. children are pretty smart and they're pretty resilient, and I don't think we give them enough credit. Now, when I say everything, that doesn't mean gory details of what happened in residential schools, but they need to know what happened, that land was stolen, that treaty promises, agreements between people were broken, that people were harmed, that there's been an injustice on, going forward, and that because of all of this, it leads us right into today, where we are still suffering the consequences of not just what happened in the past, but what's ongoing today. And kids are very smart. They understand when First Nations kids don't have clean drinking water, that that's not fair and that that's not healthy. And I think those are the kinds of things we should be teaching our kids so that they know it's more than just about something in the past. I mean, we very much get historicized. And I'm really, really tired of having my undergraduate students come to me and say, A, they learned nothing, or B, they were in the Toronto system, but everything they learned was about history. Here's what Native people used to do in the past. They hunted, they fished, they lived in teepees, or they learned it in a criminology class, which in effect perpetuates negative stereotypes. And so we're doing a real injustice to our future legislators, politicians, leaders, caregivers, when we don't give them the information to be able to act in a way that advances social justice.
One quick follow-up. What percentage of students that you deal with right now at Ryerson do you think have that understanding you just described?
But I poll them every time, about 1%.
1%?
Yes.
That few?
Including in my graduate classes. 1% say, I feel comfortable with the knowledge I have on Indigenous issues.
Wow. Okay. Susan, at how early an age, and Pamela says that students are able to handle this information, at how early an age and in how much graphic detail about the horrors of cultural genocide in residential schools should we be imparting that information?
Well, I think that there are a number of resources available for teachers to start teaching this right from JK and SK. I think that I agree with Pamela that we underestimate the capacities of children, and they want to understand, they want to know. And I'll just add to what Pamela said. The teacher candidates that I work with, I ask them as well every year. And, 20 years of teaching and, 75 teacher candidates every year. And I think I've had 2 teachers say that they had read a book by an Indigenous author. Last year, when I was meeting with Indigenous students, one of the students said, "Do you mean there are Indigenous authors?" I know. And then she caught herself and said, "I should know that. Indigenous people write books." She said, "I should know that."
Well, whose fault is it that she doesn't know that?
It's the responsibility of the teachers. And the teachers' lack of knowledge and understanding is, I think, a primary concern for all of us.
But if they're not taught to know that, that's not their fault, is it?
Well, I'm not talking about fault. I'm talking about responsibility. And it is the responsibility of teachers. And I speak with thousands of practicing teachers and teacher candidates every year. And there has been a shift, definitely. Teachers are starting to recognize their responsibility, but the majority of them continue to be very nervous about this area of study. And they know that they don't know enough, and they want to understand. They want to do the work. So, but it's challenging for teachers. For them to do this work, to understand their investments in the dominant narrative of Canadian history that very much ignored the relationship between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. That's something that they're aware of, the depth of their ignorance and the need to do work. And the folks at the Urban Indigenous Education Center, where Tanya's working, her team is working very hard with educators across the board, and they're provide knowledge and understanding to teachers, and they're exemplary across the province in terms of the work that's happening at the TDSB.
It's always good to have a rabbi nearby when you have uncomfortable questions to ask. So John Moskowitz, I'm glad you are here tonight. What do we say to Canadians who are of the view that this didn't happen in my lifetime, or new Canadians who say, my ancestors weren't even here when any of this happened? So why should these stories be downloaded to our children who, in their view, don't have a connection to this?
Reconciliation takes two forms. The first is, as has been suggested, acknowledgement and recognition by the external culture, that is to say, the government. And the second form, and I know this from my own history as a Jew, our history as Jews, is that reconciliation means that you have to do it internally. In other words, for instance, that when the Jews were exiled from our land 2 millennia ago, and we've been in exile since until 1948 when the State of Israel was established, we understood that we were marginalized and we were disrupted. And the only way, therefore, to be reconciled to that is to understand the trauma of exile and to educate oneself about who you are and what's at the center of your culture. Judaism has done this, I think, rather brilliantly, often successfully, not always. And I think Indigenous people of Canada have the opportunity now to do exactly the same. It does take the recognition, not just of the government, but of the Canadian people and of Indigenous people to say, we've been through a trauma, we've been marginalized, and here's how we are going to sustain our history.
Pamela, there's an analogy being made there between the experience of the Jewish community and Indigenous peoples. You okay with that comparison?
I am, but it's a comparison that a lot of people are uncomfortable with, because then you have to have difficult conversations around things like genocide and what is genocide and how does the UN define genocide, and there's implications for today. Some people misunderstand genocide as being, you murder a whole bunch of people all at once in one, really egregious fashion, horrific fashion, and they don't understand that genocide can actually happen over a long period of time. And the same kinds of things that are included as genocide at the UN Convention, like removing children and putting them with another group or creating conditions of life so that they'll suffer, or physical harm, are things that are ongoing today. So it's a lot easier for people to look at the past and say, look, something bad happened, let's apologize and move on. But if we get into this conversation or analogy, we have to talk about what's happening right now, and that's where people push their chair away from the table and say, whoa, that's too uncomfortable because that implicates me.
I want to jump in here and just say that, I've been working with teachers and with Canadians, for almost 30 years. And I experience what I call the perfect stranger position. Yeah. And that is when teachers and really all Canadians say to me, oh, Susan, I don't have anything to do with this history, and I don't know any Indigenous people. I didn't grow up near a reserve.
So you hear this before?
Oh,
you do
once
hear
or
this.
twice.
Once or twice you've heard this before.
So the interesting thing is that, in my work, I started to question, why is this such a position that Canadians want to occupy? And last week I was talking with teachers in Ontario, and the same response: this doesn't have anything to do with me. It's happened a long time ago. Get over it. Mm-hmm. Or, well, we all have had trouble in our histories. We're all the same. And so why do people want to be the perfect stranger? And it's because they don't want to recognize that they are implicated. Mm-hmm. And my position is, if you live on this land, then you are in a relationship with us, whether you know it or not.
If you just flew in, I'm going to take here.
Absolutely.
You just arrived last week from Somalia. You are a refugee in Canada. Mm-hmm. You will spend the remainder of your life here, you hope. Mm-hmm. You're implicated?
You are implicated because this land became available for you to fly in and make your home here because Indigenous people were forcibly removed from the land. That is a reality, and that is a part of the history of this land that you are going to now make your home on because we were removed. We weren't able to make our homes on our traditional territory.
Tanya, is that a tough sell?
Well, one of the experiences that we have in education is that Indigenous peoples are rendered invisible, particularly within the urban context in Toronto, are extremely diverse. And there are still perceptions that we were in the past. And so what we do is we It's still that we're still here. We've survived the genocide. However, colonization continues and continues to have a huge impact on Indigenous peoples today. And then considering the land, we are in relationship with the land and thinking about nation-to-nation building and the relationship of settlers to Indigenous peoples and their positionality in relationship to Indigenous peoples is of great concern because of the treaties that we have and the promises and the contracts that we've made between the Crown and Indigenous peoples in Canada, and that it's everybody's responsibility to know and to understand, to have awareness, and to take action.
One of the reasons we're having this conversation tonight is that TVO is about to embark on a 3-part so-called reality TV style series. It's called First Contact, and it's a co-production of TVO and the Aboriginal People Television Network. It's a series about Canadians who spend time in Indigenous communities, and these people aren't necessarily as woke on these issues as perhaps the people at this table would like them to be. This is a series that forces them to challenge their prejudices and their racial biases. We want to show a little clip of this show, and then we're going to come back and chat a little bit about it, okay? Okay. Here we go. Sheldon, a clip, please.
I would like to take this opportunity to welcome all of you to my community so that you can see with your own eyes, experience with your own bodies, and feel with your own hearts what this community is really about.
This could be not so bad, it could be good, or it could be like, holy, what did I just sign up for?
I have not been to a reservation ever.
We are going to stick out like sore thumbs.
It's our way of life, and we just try and maintain it as best we can.
If I was to stay at one of those homes, I would find a place to go and take a shower first thing in the morning.
Welcome to Winnipeg's North End.
It is very scary. For one, I'm the minority here.
We're really looking at the long-term effects of a genocide.
Pamela, what do you think of the premise of the show?
Oh, I think it's terrible. I mean...
Get off the fence and tell me what you really think.
For so many reasons. One, it perpetuates the ongoing myth that it is our job, it is our burden as Indigenous peoples to cure everyone else of their white supremacy, racism, hatred, and self-imposed ignorance. The other thing is my empathy for our people. We live this every day, every single day, every hour. There is someone saying something racist or horrible or doing violent things to us. Why on earth would we want to watch that on TV and go through that trauma that we live every day? I think it serves no purpose.
Well, here's the theory. Susan, I'll put it to you. The theory is, if you can watch this group of people who may have their attitudes rooted in the past, and through contact, change their hearts and minds, something constructive has been achieved. That's the premise. What do you think?
Well, I do think that it's problematic because, people fly in or engage for a short period of time and make judgments based on that short experience. For example, the person in that clip that you showed that said, if I lived in one of those houses, I would go and have a shower.
That's what they say at the beginning of the program.
Yes, but that judgment, right, that you can do better. Well, you haven't lived this history for 200 years. You haven't inherited this generations of oppression and theft of knowledge and understanding of your way of being in the world. And then to think that you can learn from, 2 or 3 days or even a week of sharing that experience, it cultivates this notion that you can walk in somebody else's shoes and know what it's like for them, and you can't. That encourages judgments rather than understanding.
Jerry, what's your view?
I echo and agree a lot with what Susan and Pam have said. I think it's incredibly problematic to go into a community for such a short amount of time, and I wholeheartely agree with what Pam has said. I do not think it is the responsibility of Indigenous people to be doing all of this work. We live in an age where everything is at our fingertips. If you have the opportunity to go to a reserve, that's wonderful, but I think we also have a responsibility as non-Indigenous people to be doing our own homework and to be doing our own research, to be doing our own learning and to be doing our own unlearning of what we do not know.
Rabbi, can a sense of empathy come from living amongst those who the target group of this production consider to be the other?
Who are the other that you're referring to?
Well, the other would be the Indigenous people in this case.
And where does the empathy come from, are you asking me?
Yeah, I wonder whether a sense of empathy among those who, let's say, hold prejudices against Indigenous people, can a greater sense of empathy come from, admittedly this is a TV show, but from sort of parking yourselves among Indigenous people for a period of time, and is it possible to lose that view of them as the other?
I don't know. I don't know about empathy. What I do know is this, and I may be less popular in the next 2 minutes after what I'm about to say. What I do know is this. Look, in the early 90s, the Dalai Lama brought a delegation of about a dozen Jews to his outpost in the Himalayas. And he said to them, these were rabbis and academics and so on, he said to them, your experience is very similar to our experience. For 2,000 years, you were in exile. How in the world did you preserve your religious culture? In other words, how did you survive? And so I'm going to throw it back to my Indigenous friends and say, it's important to tell us about the awful things that have happened and the marginalization and the attacks and the persecution. But also tell us, or more importantly, tell yourselves, how will you sustain yourselves beyond being the victims of attack? In other words, what's at the center of the self-education of Indigenous people? How do you raise the next generation so they feel proud as Indigenous Canadians? I know you don't like what I'm saying, but he invited me on the show to say something like this. And it's what I believe, and I'm talking to you as an outsider, an uneducated outsider by all means, but an outsider who cares and who is empathetic.
Okay, Susan, Pamela, here we go.
There is such a problem here that, the attitude of condescension that, we need your help, or we
I'm
need
not
to...
saying you need our help,
or we
not
need,
in any way.
You need to feel proud. My mother was the
I'm
proudest
saying
woman.
I hope you feel proud.
Well,
and
we
show
do.
it.
Let her finish. Let her
Thank
finish.
you.
By all
We
means.
do feel pride. We do. Our ancestors survived, and they taught us our teachings, our worldview. We know about balance, and we know about responsibility to each other, and the sense of recognition that we feel when we walk into a room and see each other, because we know each other, and we know a sense of belonging. So we know how to take care of ourselves. What we need is for non-Indigenous people to do the work of learning the history. This is a shared history. And the idea of empathy is it's so popular, but what I want Canadians to do is take responsibility, to know that their privilege comes at a cost to Indigenous people. And this, I think, is the critical point, that Canadians don't want to recognize that the benefits that they have, the very land that they live on, the resources that are the wealth of this nation come at a cost to Indigenous people.
Let me ask...
Don't come to our reserves and look at us and stare at us.
A tour of suffering.
Yes.
Really, we're not here for your entertainment.
Exactly.
It's a spectacle.
We
it's
lived this.
exploited.
Yes.
And empathy goes down that really awful path of charity and good deeds, and I'm doing something for you just because, as opposed to legal responsibilities that every Canadian and every Canadian government and anyone who is in here is not meeting, even just not meeting the treaties, the obligations of the treaties. These are legal obligations. These are not good deeds. These are not moral values. These are not religious values. This is an obligation, and it's actually against Canadian law and international law to be doing what Canada is doing to our people, literally killing our people. And that's why things like cultural awareness training for police officers doesn't stop them from shooting Native people and Black people at outrageous rates, or from committing acts of sexual assaults, or from engaging in human trafficking or child porn. It's not that they need to learn our culture. It's that people think that with regards to Indigenous peoples, the law and basic human rights don't apply. And that's the message that has to get across, not celebrating or glorifying some people with racist views so they'll be popular on social media, and then that'll be the conversation, not us.
Rabbi, you want to come back on that?
No.
I think Tanya has something to say about treaty education, because when you asked earlier about how early do we teach this history, I think treaty education is a great way to start, and that is getting to the very point of the relationship.
Yeah, going back to the program, it is problematic because it is exploitive, and for entertainment and for spectacle, and I think that's important. That
Is there no educational value in any of that, do you
there's
think?
some educational value. I'm not going to throw it out completely, but still at the same time, I think it's to show the chosen lack of knowledge and chosen ignorance of the people who are visiting the reserve, but it's really there's no authentic relationship that's occurring. It's not based on reciprocity. It's not based on a mutual respect. It's a pop in, pop out, and then who knows what's going to happen afterwards. So the relationship needs to be cultivated in order to build mutual trust and respect. And what we're doing at the Urban Indigenous Education Center is really emphasizing learning from Indigenous peoples, centering Indigenous voice, because Indigenous voice matters, and centering Indigenous knowledges. And Indigenous peoples have always resisted, and we continue to resist. So we really need to unpack the whole notion of victim, because we were forcibly removed from the land, dispossessed, forcibly submitted to starvation, all different kinds of atrocities in order for the Crown and settlers to benefit from the resources and the land.
You accurately predicted that what you were about to say a few minutes ago would cause some concern on the program. But clearly you said it and you meant it, and you're not taking it back.
No.
Do you think there's anything particularly controversial about what you said?
From my point of view, no, but I understand others would disagree with me. Look, I'll be very frank with you. You have to be very careful, and I may sound condescending, I understand that. You have to be very careful when you present yourselves, the Indigenous culture and history, to the rest of Canada, to name the persecution, the attack, the marginalization, the experience, and at the same time to say, here is our culture. We want you to know about our culture as much as we want you to know about how we've been attacked. Teach me about your culture. Teach me about what I don't know. I don't know anything. I'm a typical Canadian in that sense. I'd love to know. I'd love to know the core of the teachings. I'd love to know your stories. I'd love to know your history much better than I do.
So read the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, read the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples, read the Donald Marshall Inquiry, read, the Tina Fontaine report, read the upcoming National Inquiry into Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women. The most privileged people in this country continue to say, teach me. But the most privileged people in this country have really good educations, access to books. Most of them can read. Most of them have computers. I don't understand why it's our job to teach when you could come to the table as an equal partner with having done some of the homework.
Tell me a novel or history about Indigenous culture that I should read in order to know better.
I don't think Canadians get to have the privilege of learning about the beauty of our culture until they first understand why we're angry.
Fair enough.
And you need to know that history and the ongoing present, because that's what's killing our kids. You know what? If I had to choose between you learning about murdered and missing Indigenous women and advocating to stop it over learning our culture is good. We've got that. We'll share that later when our people stop dying. And so that's your obligation to be on the front lines to make sure that stops, so that we can be in a place where we're like, oh, we're good. We don't have to worry about our kids dying.
What should I do specifically to stop that?
Well, first of all, you have to have come from a base of knowledge, TRC, RCAP, all of these reports, work with Indigenous peoples, and then start advocating. Say, hey, there's gender discrimination in the Indian Act. you need to remove it. Join on as a respectful ally where you ask Indigenous people and support all of the initiatives and campaigns that are out there, but in an informed way. And you need to be ready for that. And so you've got a lot of homework to do before you can even get to that stage.
And I want to know about your culture as well.
And I want to jump in here and say that, you know, what I find makes a difference is when Canadians recognize that they are implicated in the history of oppression. When they make that recognition, then they can start to invest in doing the learning. And this takes some energy and some work on your part, not asking us to make it better for you.
Can I gently put this forward? He's Jewish. If the Jews know anything, it's suffering. They've had their share. Do you feel any connection on that?
I think that, I don't want to say that I don't feel connection. Of course I do. But at the same time, I want people who live in Canada, all people who live in Canada, to take responsibility for learning this history. And it's like people want to know what it was like for us. I want to say to you, well, what was it like for you? What's it like for you? How are you implicated in this story? This is not about you feeling for us. Feel for yourself. Feel for yourself. What does it feel like to know that you were able to come here and make a home on this land?
I don't want to put words in his mouth, but if he comes back to you and says, I feel your pain because I lost 95% of my family in the Holocaust, which is a thing that the vast majority of Canadians, similar to your tragedies, know nothing about.
Yeah.
Does he have any currency with you if he says that?
No, I don't want him to feel my pain. I want him to feel his pain, and I want him to feel his privilege, being able to come here and make a home on this land. And I want him to investigate and make a commitment to invest the energy in doing the work of learning, and then to participate in creating change.
It's not going to happen. I'm going to tell you why. People have very, very busy lives. So when I say, I want to know a novel about Indigenous culture, that's how I learn best. I am honestly, and I think I probably speak for 95% of Canadians, not going to spend hours and hours on the Truth and Reconciliation material. Should I? Sure, but I won't. So give me some material that I can learn about Indigenous culture. I learn best by reading. I get your suffering. As Steve said, the Jewish people have had similar suffering. I want to know the core of your culture. I'd love to know a novel that I should read in order to empathize.
Terry, go ahead.
There's a lot of novels out there.
Let's hear from Terry.
There are a lot of novels. I'm not sure whether I'm going to give you an answer or not, but because I think that you need to do that research. The very question that you're asking, once we're done here this evening, take out your phone, go home, sit at your laptop, and Google those questions that you are asking. 95% of Canadians don't want to do that learning. I guess I'm in that very small 5% of people that do. I enjoy it. I want to learn about it because I want to make this place, this city, this province, this country a better place. And I know that we are not at our best, and that makes me very frustrated.
Can I ask an odd follow-up of you?
For sure.
You're born in Canada, right?
I am.
Do you consider yourself Canadian, obviously?
Yes.
Do you? I have heard you describe yourself as a guest in this country,
Yes.
even though you were born here.
Yes.
Why do you say that?
I do not refer to myself as a settler because I associate that term with white European individuals. And I believe that settlers had the intention to come and remove Indigenous people from the land, occupy it, and impose their own laws. And that is not the story that is attached to my identity as a Black individual.
But if you're born and raised here, why do you think you're a guest here?
Because my ancestors did not come with the intentions to remove people from this land. Their intention was not to impose laws upon Indigenous people. So I recognize and associate myself as a guest here. And so how I navigate my work and how I do my work is rooted in respect and building relationships with Indigenous people. That is at the root of what I do.
How do you regard that, Pamela?
Well, I mean, I think what she's trying to get at here is that there's a fundamental difference between an invader and then someone who comes later after the invasion has happened, but has an awareness that they're not invited here, and has a responsibility to act accordingly, not just according to the invaders' laws and rules and norms and cultures, but also the one that was displaced and harmed. And I think what she's trying to say is that there's an ongoing responsibility here, because the fact of the matter is, someone who just came here today gets to, because of not just past dispossession, but ongoing. It's not like we've all said, well, we're sorry we removed you from your lands. We're actually going to now add lands to the reserves, and there's lots of unoccupied Crown territory. It's the fact that it's ongoing, and that all of the programs and services that people enjoy in this country are subsidized in part from the theft of resources from our territories. So, people look at us as a burden because we want a little fraction of our own money back, but in fact, it's Canadians who are a burden on us because they take all of our resources, and that's a frank conversation we don't have.
Okay, I got a minute left.
May I ask one question?
Sure.
Would you consider me a settler?
That's an interesting
Everybody's quiet.
question.
Everybody's quiet on that one.
I think that's
wanna
something.
say
I think that's something that you have to, discover on your own.
No, I'm asking you.
I have not
You
always.
consider me a
I have not
settler.
always been able to name myself as a guest here. That's something that I've arrived at very recently, because I've continued to uncover what my relationship is to this land, what my relationship is to Indigenous people. And so that's a process that you have to go through. That's the homework that you have to keep doing to figure out
And
what that is for
at the
you.
end of the homework, should I consider myself a settler?
That's a question you need to ask yourself, and you need to
You're
do the
saying yes.
work to answer
I'm
that.
agreeing that is the work that we are asking
Yeah.
you to do, to know your history. How did you come to make your home here? And
It wasn't with the family compact, I can tell you that.
Okay, but I think that what we're uncovering here is the complexity of the relationships that exist on this land, but that we all have a responsibility to know whose land we live on. How did the land become available for you to make your home here?
You know what, friends?
And
We need another hour here.
Yeah,
but we don't have it. We don't have it. I gotta go. We gotta go. I can't thank you enough for a very tense but illuminating conversation. I'm really grateful to all of you for coming into TVO tonight. Pamela's not going to like this, but I am going to plug the upcoming episode of... A reminder, you can catch the first of 3 episodes of the TVO APTN series, First Contact. It airs on TVO tonight at 10 p.m. or anytime, sorry, Pamela, anytime at tvo.org/documentaries. It's online as well. Sorry, Pam. Thank you, everybody.
Pleasure.
The Agenda with Steve Bacon is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.